Hopefully you caught my week 1 waiver wire ads video because several of the players to grab in week 2 were already on my waiver wire ads list last week to go ahead and stash, get ahead of the game. But if you didn't grab them, that's okay. Don't worry. There is still time to get them. Week 1 was wild. Veterans underwhelmed. Players we didn't know if we could trust stepped up big time. Now, who are we targeting on waivers for week 2? Do not overlook Michael Penix Jr.'s performance in week 1. 27 completions on 42 attempts, 298 yards, 1 touchdown, and 6 rushing attempts for 21 yards and a rushing touchdown for what will end up being a top 12 finish for week 1. The opportunity for Penix in Atlanta's offense is a lot higher than you might initially think. Atlanta's offense was actually very high in terms of volume in their offense last season under Kirk Cousins. The problem was that Cousins failed to actually convert that yardage into touchdown opportunities and was extremely prone to turnovers. All Penix has to do to succeed from a fantasy perspective is just not turn the ball over and get the ball towards the end zone. Now, this is a long-term stash. In week 2, he faces a Minnesota defense that could be tough. And on top of that, we've got Drake London day-to-day with a shoulder injury. And then keep in mind, Penix did not have his wide receiver 2 and big play target in Darnell Mooney this past week as well. When the offense is healthy, it is stacked with pass catchers, including Bijan Robinson. Penix has extreme upside. Plus, he showed that mobility on the ground. That rushing upside is always a plus. All the buzz this offseason for the Patriots was around rookie receiver Kyle Williams, but it was Kayshon Boutte that had the quiet but very strong offseason and earned the starting role. Now, I know that it feels very unlikely, but we could be in line for one of those surprise year 3 breakouts that we get every now and then from young receivers who were in bad offenses, where absolutely no one stood out from a receiving perspective. I'm not calling Kayshon Boutte Nico Collins, but that would technically be the comp for the type of breakout that he would be having. Remember, Nico Collins had 2 incredibly mediocre seasons before finally ascending in his 3rd year. Boutte was once a very promising prospect before suffering an injury, and production and circumstances dramatically lowered his draft stock. Boutte was the Patriots' most productive receiver this week with 6 receptions on 8 targets for 103 yards. He is a solid add. This one was particularly painful because I did have David Njoku predicted for a massive day, and instead it was Harold Fannin Jr. who stole all of that attention. Fannin had 7 receptions on 9 targets for 63 yards, plus 1 carry for 3 yards. Now, David Njoku was still involved. He caught 3 of 6 targets for 37 yards. Njoku played more snaps. He ran more routes. I would expect both tight ends to be used on a regular basis, and that does actually make sense for the Cleveland offense. Traditionally, under Kevin Stefanski, they have targeted tight ends at a very high rate and have utilized multiple tight ends. Fannin's production shouldn't really be shocking. His college production was also very impressive, and if it was not for the fact that that production came for a small conference school, he definitely would have had a lot more buzz around him. I have Fannin higher this week than several other tight ends that had strong performances because to show this level of upside in your first game as a rookie and you're not even the starter, I am willing to take a chance there. Again, it seemed very clear that they aren't heavily integrating a wide receiver 3, meaning the value is increased for the tight ends. Again, there were a lot of strong tight end performances, and I could argue in favor of them, but when I am parsing through ones that I am actually buying into, Juwan Johnson sticks out for one very big reason. Kellen Moore's true identity as a head coach is exactly what Mike McCarthy was complaining about in Dallas. Pass, 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 aggressive pace. I don't have a problem with it. But it's tough to imagine a scenario where Spencer Rattler is throwing the ball 40 plus times every game, but if history does indicate anything, do not put it past Kellen Moore. Johnson had a whopping 8 receptions on 11 targets for 76 yards. He was the most productive player for the entire Saints offense. He played the most snaps of anyone, and he ran the most routes of any Saints player. Johnson has been in the league for a while and has never sustained that level of production for an entire season, so that's why he's a little further back on the list. But this usage is too specific to ignore. I got a lot of start-sit questions regarding Jerome Ford, and my answer was an emphatic no, because I believed that he would split carries with Dylan Sampson, and lo and behold, that is exactly what happened, and Sampson looked dramatically better than Ford. Quentin Johnston could play as early as next week, but Sampson still has value as a waiver wire add. We have to remember that Judkins does profile for an early down back, and Sampson could still have value as the change of pace back, especially if they bring on Judkins kind of slowly because he missed so much time with the off-field issue. Sampson still has value even with Judkins in this offense, especially from a receiving perspective. In week 1, Aaron Rodgers looked like the old version of Aaron Rodgers. There was no residue of the version that we saw in New York. He had 4 passing touchdowns against a solid Jets defense, and one of them was to Calvin Austin, who had 4 receptions on 7 targets for 70 yards. We knew that DK Metcalf would be the wide receiver 1, and that was definitely the case despite it being a bad matchup for Metcalf, but someone had to step up as the second look in that offense, and it was Calvin Austin. Austin has had 3 seasons under his belt, and he hasn't really popped, but to be fair, all of those seasons have been with Pittsburgh through their quarterback struggles, so Austin finally stepping up with a strong quarterback does make logical sense. The target share was very clear. Aside from Ben Skoronek's 1 reception for a touchdown, Metcalf and Austin were the only receivers to touch the ball. Again, week 1 was wild. Tua Tagovailoa and Miami looked like a complete mess, while Daniel Jones and the Colts looked like an insanely well-oiled machine. Jones got it done on the ground and through the air. 22 completions on 29 attempts for 272 yards, passing touchdown, no interceptions, and 7 rush attempts for 26 yards. Very efficient day for Daniel Jones, and we love to see the added value on the ground. Now, be aware, Jones does have a very tough draw in week 2 for Denver, so he is not an ideal streaming option for week 2, but that is not why we are targeting him. We are adding him as a strong streaming option for the entire season as a whole. His rushing upside is real. Justin Herbert came out and showed out, and all of his receivers benefited. We know Ladd McConkey was going to be the wide receiver 1, but we truly didn't know how the pecking order was going to shake out beyond that. The snaps this week were very clear. Quentin Johnston played 82% of snaps. Keenan Allen played 62% of snaps. Neither of the rookies cracked even 25%. Johnston has been a very heavily criticized player because of his inconsistencies, but he is a big play receiver, and you take the good with the bad, and week 1 was heavy on the good. 5 receptions, 7 targets for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. As much as we like to say the Chargers want to be run heavy, we cannot deny that Justin Herbert was absolutely dealing, and keeping that lightning in a bottle, it is ill-advised. I told you to add him last week. Cedric Tillman is real. Last year, we got a little sample size of Cedric Tillman when he was the wide receiver 8 overall in the 4 games that he started in full. This week against Cincinnati, Tillman had 5 receptions on 8 targets for 52 yards and a touchdown. It is a soft matchup for sure, but this is exactly what we wanted to see. Jerry Jeudy was a little bit shaky, but I do still see him as the wide receiver 1, but Tillman is definitely the clear 1B that has fantasy relevancy on a weekly basis. If you look at the box score, you might be a little concerned about the Browns offense with Joe Flacco. Don't be. He had 2 interceptions, but it should be noted that both of those interceptions were, oddly enough, on passes where the receiver was diving for the ball and somehow managed to bobble the ball in the air and it got intercepted. Not his fault. Again, it was an easy matchup, but Tillman's performance was very encouraging, and the Browns' offense didn't actually look that bad. The Chiefs are truly in a dire position at wide receiver. Rashee Rice is still at the beginning of his suspension. Xavier Worthy dislocated his shoulder, and the Chiefs say that he's going to try and play through it versus attempting surgery. You as a fantasy manager won't know if the goal is actually realistic before waivers run. And we also see time and time again where day-to-day goes from week to week real quick when you get on the field and actually try to work through that injury. Do I trust Hollywood Brown to stay healthy for an entire season? Absolutely not. But moving forward, he is the wide receiver 1 for Patrick Mahomes. We did get involvement from Juju Smith-Schuster, and Tyquan Thornton was still a consistent deep threat. However, the clear volume play here is Hollywood Brown. The Chiefs spoke multiple times throughout the offseason about how they wanted to push the ball downfield with the deep ball a little bit more. However, given their situation, I would expect them to continue to keep the passes very short, and that does benefit Brown, who played very well this week in the intermediate area. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and stick around because I'm bringing you this type of content all season long to help you win your fantasy league.